board in general at JNR, does JNR expect that you review a certain number of times before before you're able to hold that position?
So we don't really have a specific number that we look at. We do expect that if you are interested in becoming an editor for the journal, that you would have established a peer review relationship with the journal. That way we can see whether or not you are reliable and we can also check the quality of your reviews. But generally, especially now that we're trying to expand our editorial board, we're looking for people who are covering certain areas of expertise that we may not necessarily have covered currently on the board, since neuroscience is such a broad area of research. But, we kind of expect that at least you would have reviewed for the journal at least a few times before you are considered for the editorial board. And of course, in order to be a topic editor or associate editor, you would have had to have some significant contributions to the journal in the past.
Great. Question for Christina. How do trainees get involved in reviewing papers?
Yeah. So we, as a lab, we do review papers together. So first of all, many journals now, including JNR, there is in the reviewer sheets, there is one question that asks whether anybody contributed to the review or help with the review. Often we've also, when I accept to review papers, like yesterday, I accepted to review this paper that was on the role of melatonin in circadian disruptions in diurnal birds. And that's one of the students in the lab has a similar project. So I made sure that we review the paper together. It was really hard because undergrads usually do not like to talk. So I had to push and push and push. But usually what I do is if I find a paper or I receive an invitation, or even for JNR, if there is a paper that is important or it's interesting for a student, and they need to build their skills to learn to read a paper critically, not to be too harsh, not to be too soft and all that. So I usually invite them as reviewers directly, especially if they are in the last few years of PhD grad school, if they're graduating and I know that they are going to do it. We have one student who is fantastic. He actually the other day, he rejected the paper and I was like, wow, he rejected the paper. It must be, and his comments were on spot. They were really great. So with the years, first he started doing reviews with us and we always reported his name. And then now he's, on his own, he writes beautiful reviews. He's very, very detailed, which is something I really like. But in general, I try to involve, and many, Wiley especially, and Elsevier, they have all these parts about training someone to become a reviewer. Yeah, I wasn't trained to become a reviewer. I just got assigned a paper, and it took me like 2 weeks, I guess, the first time. But I think it's very important that the mentors do that. It's on the mentors. Yeah.
We have one last question about being involved in journals, and this is for Paula. And this might be a little bit hard to answer, but maybe boil it down a little bit about what makes for a good review, and maybe this could be specific to JNR.
Right. So in my opinion, so this is my view, a good review would be one that is objective. So we do not want a review that is laced with, subjective type of comments. We want one that is polite. We know that we are delivering critiques to a paper, so we want to highlight the good parts of the paper before we tear it apart if we need to. For every paper, there is some good points about the paper. So you want to at least bring out a few of those good points, and then you talk about some of the areas for improvement. And we want you to be as specific as possible. That way you can help the authors. In some cases, the first authors are either graduate students and postdoc trainees. So you know that they're learning the process. So you want to be as kind as possible. And as editors, sometimes, we look at the reviews, and there has been some instances where I've had to contact the reviewer and say, hey, can you change the language a little bit, because we want, you know, the person on the receiving end to not feel attacked, but we want them to feel like, oh, wow, this has been helpful and it really does improve our work. So that is the goal to me of any review paper or any review that you submit. How can I help the authors to improve this particular work, that it could be a good piece in the literature?